Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. In each episode, we're going to have conversations with some of the top investors, superstar founders, as well as well-known tech company executives in Silicon Valley. We'll have a coffee chat with them to learn their way of thinking and actionable tips on how they build or invest in a successful company. Before we start our show today, I want to make sure the listener, aka you, understand that everything a person say on the podcast only reflects hers or his own opinion, not the show or the company they work at. Our guest today is one of Silicon Valley's first female African-American CEOs. She serves as a board member of Verizon, Nordstrom, Roper Technologies, and Okta. She was the former CEO of MetricStream, where she turned a struggling Silicon Valley startup to a global leading compliance software company. Prior to becoming the CEO, she was an executive at IBM and CMO at two other public companies. She is the author of Unapologetically Ambitious. Her name is Shellye Archambeau. This episode is the first part of the conversation with Shellye. We'll focus on how Shellye built up the fundamental qualities that helps her succeed. Please enjoy. Hi, Shellye. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, Grace.
I have to say your book is amazing. There are so many great leadership wisdoms in this book. It's great for leaders that are in all different stages in life. There's so many topics I'd love to cover today. I want to start with your drive and resiliency. To start the show, can you share with us one core experience in your early life impacted you throughout your career?
Oh, goodness. I'll tell you, you're going to the right point. It was definitely how I was raised and the environment in which I was raised that totally impacted and shaped who I am. One major event would be when my family moved from Philadelphia to California. I was in the first grade and we were living in Philadelphia. Very diverse, right? Didn't even realize at that point or even understand Black, white, minority, right? The whole bit. They were just kids and just people. And I moved to LA. My family moved to a place called Granada Hills, which at the time, I was not only the only Black girl in my class, but in the grade and maybe in the school. It was so not diverse. And unfortunately, because it was also a time in the 60s when the whole focus on we talk now about racial justice, then it was just trying to get rights, equal rights and things like that were going on, that for as many people that wanted equal rights, there were just as many that didn't, right, want that to happen. Mm-hmm. And moving into this kind of a neighborhood, people let me know very soon, very vigorously, verbally and physically that they didn't really want me there. And I wasn't very welcome. Well, I went from being a kid, I was the oldest of four. And if you were to listen to my mother, she was like, I was born 4 years old, going on 30. I was telling her what to do with her little kids, right? And things like that. So I grew from this kid that was frankly, bubbly and optimistic and positive and, excited, ambitious, all those things to it, literally almost being beat out of me when I was in California. And thankfully, to some great teachers and to my parents, I came through it. But the messages that I got about coming through it, which is what really created the resiliency, was number one, when I come home and complain about stuff that happened to me, I would say, it's not fair, right? Not fair. And my mother would be like, you're right. It's not fair. And you're like, what? Life's supposed to be fair. I mean, as a kid, you want fairness, right? You get 2 pieces, I get 2 pieces. You get 10 minutes, I get 10 minutes, right? Everything's fair. No, life is not fair. And so the whole point was, it's not fair. Don't look for fairness. Just figure out what you're going to do about it. Whew, okay. And then the second big message was, you can't control what people say to you. And you can't control what people do to you. But you can control how you respond. So don't let them win. Don't let people control or impact how you feel. And if they do, definitely don't show it because that lets them win. So that whole combination, right? Life's not fair. Don't go looking for it. Figure out what you're going to go do about it. To what you can control and what you can, and don't let people impact how you, all of those things really became the foundation of the resiliency you talked about. Because, bottom line, I had to figure out what to do. Because I knew if I just did what everybody else did, I wasn't going to get what everybody else got.
There was one part of the book really struck me, was that you mentioned that your classmate hit you and you would go home and try to not cry. Those are really tough moments. How do you pick yourself up in those situations? I feel like dealing with the terrible situations, power through them, just shape you into who you are today. If someone listening to this is in a really tough place, everyone's telling them, you can't, what would be your advice for them? You are someone who is really good at school. A lot of people may not be that intellectual or not interested in things that are school related. Curious, what would you advise people like this, who is not good at school as well as not quote unquote very popular? What would you do to succeed if you're in their shoe?
Yes. Okay. So a bunch of things in that question, right? So one, how do you power through, right? When everything from people are telling you can't do something, right? And all that stuff. Well, to me, I am competitive. I think growing up one of 4 kids in the family, right? We just grew up very competitive, always competing. And so what I always keep in the back of my mind, Grace, is I don't want to let them win. All right. I don't want to let them win. So if I give up, or if I don't do something that I think I should do just because somebody thinks that I shouldn't, then I let them win. So many times I was totally uncomfortable. I mean, don't think I went into all these things thinking, oh, I know this is exactly the right decision. I should definitely do this. No. It was, all right, take the deep breath, shoulders back, and you're not going to let them win. So you are going to show up, right? You're not going to let them win. So you are going to step forward. It was literally this whole mantra in my head about I was not going to let them win. And I was going to prove, frankly, that I was capable and I was competent and I could do it. Despite the fact that those were all the things that people were thinking, right? And or saying to me in the background. So part of it is I just wanted to prove that, yes, I can and earn that respect. So no, I wasn't definitely. Was I more confident? Absolutely not. I developed courage. And it's through that courage over time that I then developed confidence as I was able to power through and make things happen. And you do that often enough and you do develop, right, that confidence. But don't think you have to have it first. That comes second. First step is courage. Courage to push through, courage to do things when it feels uncomfortable. Right? And honestly, the biggest thing about courage and feeling uncomfortable is it's when things feel uncomfortable. Well, that's when you're learning the most, right? Because it's completely different. It's something you haven't experienced before, right? You haven't done it. So life is all about learning. So when you feel that, lean into it with, okay, I'm learning, I'm growing, right? But versus thinking of it as, oh my God, scary and it'll hurt me and, all those things. So that's that piece. Now, with regards to students who are not good students, all right, listen, being a good student has nothing to do with being smart. Let me say that again. Being a good student has nothing to do with being smart. There are a lot of smart people that get terrible grades and a lot of people who are just okay in intelligence and they get great grades. Okay, so those two they aren't connected. So if you actually have come through where you just haven't applied yourself, right? And now you decide you do want to apply yourself. Well, the good news is it's never too late. Okay, it's never too late. And speaking just personally, I had a son. Son is very capable, very confident. Did he get great grades in high school? He did not. All right. Now, he didn't fail, but I wouldn't say that he was like this terrific student, right? So he gets into college and this same child graduates magna cum laude. All right. He got it late. It was like, oh, okay, I'm now interested in doing something. All right, I do need this to be able to go get a job. Let me go focus. So, for people who it hasn't clicked in yet, all right, what I would tell you is it's never too late. And whether it's while you're still in school or after you're done with school, there are many people, matter of fact, they've done studies, people who are CEOs and done all these great things, right? I think the average grade is like a C+. I'm telling you, it has nothing to do with that. I went after work and I went after good grades because frankly, it was one of the few ways that I could get positive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting good grades and being a good student, I got good feedback. And so I kept doing it. And it also gave me more options. And it gave me the opportunity to improve my luck. And as a Black female, I needed all the help I could get. So that's why I focused on all that.
You are a good student. You went to the best school. You had a job at Google of its day. But what if your plan A failed? You mentioned that you only applied to one school. What if you didn't get in? Do you have a plan B?
Nope. If I didn't get, I did have a plan, right? I mean, so yes, that was bold, but I wasn't stupid. So I had a plan. And my plan was I was going to apply to UVA and University of Michigan. Those were my two backup schools. Mm-hmm. And I knew what dates I needed to apply by to be in consideration. So I had a backup plan.
Back in time when you started, the successful career path is really straightforward. If you want to be a CEO, you go to the best school, you work in sales. There's a formula to be a leader. Nowadays, success can be achieved from many different paths. For example, the Airbnb founders were designers, and many successful leaders didn't come from a traditional background. You are great at planning for success. If you're in your 20s today, how would you make your career plan for the future?
So if you're trying to become a CEO, again, it all depends. At first, when I was going after CEO, I was trying to become CEO of a big company. Mm-hmm. Right. But if you're trying to go build a company, it's very different in terms of what's required and what's needed. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to actually create your own company and do a startup, and the kinds of skills and experience you need are actually being in an environment like that, because I don't care what classes you go to, they can't teach you all that you need to know about just resilience and challenge and all those things that happen when you're actually in a startup. So my big advice for people who actually want to go build something is make sure you work in a startup so that you get a chance to really understand what all's involved. Because what you see when you see people go IPO and stand on stage, it all looks glamorous and fabulous. It's because nobody tells you how hard it is. Nobody. I'm here to tell you, it's hard, right? It's really hard. So you want to make sure you've got that fortitude and everything beforehand.
I totally agree with you. The best way to learn something is to get yourself in the environment to start doing the job. Basically, training yourself in actions. In terms of making smart career decisions, in your book, you mentioned that when you're younger, you got help from your teachers. One of them helped you to ride a horse. Through that experience, you felt confidence. They made great impact in your life. Later on, you had mentors from IBM. One of the IBM mentor or colleague encouraged you to find a mentor outside of IBM too. How do you build up your personal network? Who is on your personal board of advisors?
I've been really fortunate to have a lot of people that I adopted along the way. To be advisors, mentors, et cetera. Some of the people that have had the biggest impact, Bill Campbell is definitely one by far, the late Bill Campbell. Mm-hmm. I would say earlier in my career, I was a gentleman by the name of Ken Thornton. Mm-hmm. Ken was with IBM, an executive, and he was definitely a mentor supporter, but probably more of a sponsor as well. Mm-hmm. And who else would I? And then it's hard to pull people out. One of my very first mentors was Ruth. The time her name was Ruth Green. She's now Ruth Davis. We are still friends to this day. But I learned one of the most important lessons from her before I even started working full time. I was an intern, and she had won an award, and I went up to congratulate her. I didn't really know her. I mean, I knew who she was, but we weren't like friends or anything. And I went up and congratulated her because here I am in school and she gets like a $5,000 award, which today would be, more like 20 in terms of equivalent. And I'm thinking, wow, whatever she did, right? That's fantastic. And when I congratulated her, she said, thanks. And then she looked at me and she said, see me afterwards. And then afterwards, she took the time to tell me, she goes, Shellye, everybody around here is working hard. She said, but not everybody can be awarded and can be highlighted. She said, the biggest key is making sure that you involve others so that they know what you do. A lot of people just work hard and put their head down and nobody knows what they're actually doing or how hard they're working. And then they don't get recognized for it. So make sure people actually know what you do. Well, let me tell you, that was a huge piece of advice. And I took it from the beginning of my career, right? So when you say people who impacted you, it's not so much that they impacted me over time, as much as what the lessons that I learned that I was able to take with me and build on.
Thank you for sharing with us about it. How are you implementing the advice that you got? You mentioned about you had many sponsors. Why did they pick you? Besides being smart and ambitious, what are some small things that you did made them want to help you and invest in you?
You know what? This is such an important point, Grace, because I will tell you, most people are terrible mentees. Terrible. Nobody teaches anyone how to be a mentee and or how to be a mentor, right? If I ask you a question, you're now my mentor and I'm your mentee, right? I mean, it's just crazy. So what happens is people reach out to people for advice, for counsel, tell me what to do, whatever it might be. And then they disappear. Well, that's a take, right? If I ask you for advice or for help, I'm taking from you. Well, that's not a relationship. The only way that you turn it into a relationship is both parties have to get value. So you have to figure out as a mentee how you actually get value to your mentor so that they will build a relationship with you. Because it's only when you have a relationship that you really get value. The little snippet, vice here, vice there, one off, that's nice, but it's the relationship that is the most meaningful. And the best way to give value back is by letting people know how their advice, how their perspective, how their counsel actually impacted you. So you need to close the loop. I asked for advice on this. I went off and did this. I need to come back to them and tell them at some point, hey, thanks very much for the advice. I was able to do blah, 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 all thanks to you. Now, why do you say that? You say it because now when I hear it, if I'm the mentor, I feel good. I mean, it warms your heart. Most people want to be able to help other people. So when you told me I actually helped, I feel good. That's value. Now you have something to start building a relationship on. So the key is building a relationship. And more than that, if you keep letting them know how they're impacting you, before you know it, if you do well, here's the key. You have to be good at what you do. They'll start claiming you. Oh, Grace? Oh, yeah, I give her advice from time to time, right? They want to take credit for how well you're doing. And once they do that, right, then they can even turn into a sponsor. So it's so important as you go along to actually build a true relationship with people.
Yeah, I love that advice. Sometimes the challenge is I feel like I don't want to bother my mentor. I'm worried about if I can't bring much value, am I wasting their time? I don't want to send 20 emails a week so they get tired of me. How often do you follow up?
A lot of it depends. No, this is not something where once a week you're dropping them an email, right? No. They're not managing you. But whenever you've actually asked for something. So let's say you had a conversation and I'm making it up. You're struggling with how to effectively, present a certain topic, right? It's very complex. You're struggling with that. You meet with your mentor to talk about how to actually position it, how you might do it, blah, blah, blah. Well, after you do the presentation, you should follow up. And it's quick and it's easy. And you just say, thank you for all your advice. I did X, Y, and Z. It worked great. This was one of the best presentations I've made. I'm confident I'll be able to continue, right? To blah, blah, blah. Thanks for your help. Done, right? Done. That is a quick note. So it's quick things. No, they don't want to know everything you're doing and what you ate for breakfast. And that's not what it is. But it is helpful for them to know, have they made an impact? And it's even okay to go back to them and say, that session I was talking to you about and planning for, it got canceled. So all that work went for naught. So if it didn't happen, tell them that too, right? I mean, the key is you want to close the loop on what's transpiring. If something exciting happens, hey, just wanted to share. I just got promoted, right? To blah, 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 blah. That's fine to share, right? That's good news. That's nice, whatever. And then you put in there, thanks for your support, right? Again, gratitude is a huge value. And most people don't show enough of it, frankly. But That's the biggest way to actually build these relationships.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing the great tip. What is one technical skill you learned early on in your career you find really helpful later on? You mentioned about communication skill is valuable. You took Toastmasters in the past. You were in sales at one point. I think you mentioned everyone should learn about sales. What is one technical skill you are constantly trying to get better at?
Oh, gosh, constantly trying to get better at? I would say effective communications. Effective communications are so powerful. Mm-hmm. It's through communication that we persuade, that we negotiate, that we recruit, that we do. I mean, think about it. Anything of significance that you're trying to achieve, it takes other people too. Mm-hmm. And if other people are involved, then how effective you can communicate with them will absolutely impact the ultimate result. How fast, how good, how successful, all of those things. So effective communication is still something I spend time on.
How do you practice what you have learned about communications? What are some actions you take to get better at it?
Well, I can give you a great example. So I'm in the process of reading, I'm almost done, with a book by Malcolm Gladwell. Mm-hmm. That's called Talking to Strangers. All right. So mm-hmm. This book is not about how to give a speech, or how to stand up, but it is about misunderstandings in communication, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm reading this book because it actually ties to overall communication. So when you say, what do? I read and I spend time, and I try to understand nuances and the whole bit. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I feel like you're such a great communicator now. When you mentioned you took Toastmasters, I feel like you didn't need it.
Well, no, you have to understand. Wait, let's roll back. You're seeing me now, right?
Right.
You're seeing a woman in her 50s. When I started IBM, and I'm in my early 20s, I was not a good public speaker. I was scared. Whenever I had to do it in front of a group, I'd get nervous. I'd hold my paper, my notes. And if you look closely, you'd see that it might be shaking a little bit. I mean, I was not comfortable at all. And what happened was I'm looking around and I knew I wanted to be a CEO. So I'm watching this, executives say, what do they do? How do they operate, et cetera. And one trait that I saw that just about all of them were good, and some were great, was speaking. They could get up in front of a group, command an audience. They could impromptu, deliver speeches. They look so comfortable on their feet. And I thought, oh man, if that's a required skill, I'm not even going to make it to executive, forget CEO, given that I'm not good at that. So I had to go get good. And that's why I joined Toastmasters, because Toastmasters gave me a way to practice and get feedback, because mm-hmm. that's the key. Otherwise, the only time you practice is when it counts. Somebody asks you to speak. Okay, you speak. Mm-hmm. 5-6 months later, you do another one. You might do another one. Well, you know what? If you sit down to play the piano and you practice every 6 months, you're going to be playing chopsticks for a very long time, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. You have to practice. Well, with any skill, whether it's speaking, it's athletics, it's piano, it's violin, it doesn't matter. It's practice. So I joined Toastmasters so I could get practice when it didn't count, so that when it did count, I could show up and do a good job. And to me, that's what it's all about. It's about building up skills and investing in yourself.
Totally. I'm going to sign up Toastmaster after this. All right. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Smart Venture Podcast. In the next episode, we'll learn more about how Shellye navigates her career as a CEO. Don't forget to come back on Wednesday for the second part of the conversation with Shellye. If you like it, please leave us a quick review and hit subscribe so you don't miss any tips from the experts. If you want to receive our updates, please leave your email at smartventurepod.com. If you want to connect with me, all my socials are at Grace Gong GG. Besides LinkedIn, it's just Grace Gong. I'd love to connect with you and let me know your thought about the show. Now you can also listen to Smart Venture Podcast on YouTube. Go to smartventurepod.com. Click the YouTube link on the top banner. Don't forget to hit subscribe and smash the like button. See you next time.